Here's a sketch I prepared for this project. The first step of the process is carving this rough outline. In the very end of the process, you're also going to need a stick that is thick enough to hold the owl figure in balance. We can define the rough outline faster by removing the biggest unnecessary parts with a saw. If you don't have a saw available, another option is making a lot of rough cuts like this. Once you get to this kind of a shape, it's time to round out the edges a little bit. After that, we can define the neck a little better by removing a shape like this. This is easy to do with a few sweeping cuts. Next, we can make the head rounder and slightly smaller. At first, you can just make rough cuts, but when getting closer to the wanted shape, push cuts and paring cuts become very handy as you'll have better control of the blade. There's no need to make the head shape perfect yet, because we're still going to make some adjustments later on. Next, we'll need to do a similar thing with the body. The goal here is to carve away all unnecessary edges, bumps, and flat surfaces to create a smoother, rounder shape. Now that we have a better idea of the basic shape and the proportions of the owl figure, we can go back to the head and make it slightly smaller again to match the rest of the body better. What I'm doing here is sketching two areas that need to be removed. This is because these parts of the wings can be slightly flatter. This step is about defining the lower face with these V-cuts. After carving this groove, you can make the close-by areas of the chest slightly rounder. The face is the next step. We start off with this sketch of the outline and the center line of the face. The parts inside the lines can then be carved flat. After that, we'll sketch an appropriate side profile, which is just this slight curve. This is what it should look like from the front. Again, we can remove the wood from inside the lines to create the curved side profile. Then it's time to sketch the basic features of the face and press the blade directly into the wood along the triangular shape of the beak. This allows you to make these stop cuts that will define the shape of the beak. The area around the eyes is the most difficult part of this project. These cuts right here are just V-cuts using the tip of the blade, but what makes them difficult is the curved shape and that the facial details need to be quite precise. If you have the option, the smaller the blade, the easier this will be, because having a grip closer to the cutting point will provide better control. We'll use this same technique to also flatten these parts a little, because the angle of the forehead doesn't need to be very steep, and more importantly, the brow region should be significantly further back than the beak. Even the eyes are made with the same curved V-cut technique. However, this step is already much easier because of the rounder shape of the eyes. The cuts are mostly just twisting, and the tip of the blade is easier to hold in place due to the already existing groove. Here I'm defining the edges of the wings, mostly with just sweeping cuts. Now we only have one more thing to whittle, and that is the feathers. We'll use a combination of flat surfaces and stop cuts. The wings go all the way down to the tail, and on the lower parts the feathers are going to be longer. This section right here is about separating the wings from the tail and also from the upper parts of the wings. If you find these shapes confusing, I suggest looking at online images of barn owls and then make the cuts based on those. The final step of the process is cutting a branch into a suitable base for the owl figure and making sure that the pieces match before gluing. Here I'm just using regular wood glue, and I noticed that with a figure as small as this, it's not even necessary to have the seam under pressure for the entire drawing as long as the pieces match nicely.